Chair awaits. The chair is scared. This is an imposing figure, ladies and gentlemen. 6'6", 275. But he is more than a big man physically. As you will hear several times in our video presentation, he's a giant in character, a man who is a motivator, who expresses integrity in word and deed, and is genuinely modest to a fault, really, yet has so much about which he could boast. Here are a few things that he might tell you only if he was coerced to do so. Born in Port Hood, he never played football because there was no program in his home community. He decided to give the sport a try at Acadia University and became an All-Canadian defensive lineman. He would be proud to say he was also an academic All-Canadian. Despite playing only 3 years of university football, Bruce was a first-round draft pick of the BC Lions of the CFL. He was forced to learn a new position, offensive line. But in his 12 years in the CFL, 7 with Edmonton, 3 with Montreal, he was named to 3 CFL All-Star teams and 7 Division All-Star teams, plus was named the most outstanding Western Division lineman in 2002. With all of those individual accolades in a team sport, it is surprising Bruce Beaton is respected for his unselfish play, willingness to help others become better players, and dedication to improve himself to make the team better. It is not surprising at all. Listen to former teammate and now business partner Dan Comiskey tell you a bit about Bruce Beaton.
Bruce is a humble guy. Like, that's one of the attractive qualities to him. It's not about how much glory he can have. It's not about putting the finger on him and saying, you know, I'm great. That's never what it's been about for him. And if it was, he wouldn't be the same guy.
Alan Wetmore, currently head football coach at Sir John A. Macdonald High School, was a teammate of Bruce at Acadia and also with the Montreal Alouettes.
He was you know, I often talk about Bruce, and I often have opportunities to talk about Bruce in interviews of this nature, and I constantly say the same thing. He was a consummate professional. He was extremely goal-oriented, very motivated, and very diligent and determined in everything that he did. So we had a collection of people at Acadia at the time, and including, again, Jamie Pepper, because he was kind of our leader to some degree. And we did everything that it took to become as good as we could be. We lifted the weights, we ate properly, we watched the video, we did all the extras. And so Bruce was, you know, he was a very diligent person. He was, you know, someone obviously his parents would be proud of, because he took to his job and he did everything he could to be as best that he could at his job. And it was a role model to the rest of us.
Everywhere he played, he showed leadership, and that leadership on the offensive line ensured his Edmonton Eskimos would win 2 Grey Cups, one in 2003, after which Bruce retired, and one in 2005 when he realized he was still too young and too enthusiastic to be retired. Ed Hervey was a wide receiver on Bruce Beaton's Edmonton teams, and he's now an Eskimos scout, and he recently spoke to the CBC outside of Commonwealth Stadium.
Bruce was very gritty, very determined, very hard-nosed player. I mean, for your offensive lineman, he was one of those guys that you could actually talk to. And most of the time, offensive linemen, they generally do their own thing. They stay in their own groups. But when I first got here, Bruce and I would sit up at the top of the stairs after every practice, and we would always talk about how we could get better, how this team could get better. And it was from being around Bruce early in my career is where I learned exactly some of the things of what it takes to not only play for the Eskimos, but what it takes to survive in this league.
Knowing the type of man Bruce is and developing a friendship with him convinced Dan Comiskey to move his family east, and now they are neighbors in Wolfville. They continue to train together to keep their bodies in shape, even though neither has plans to play any more competitive football.
The nice thing about our relationship is we immediately started training together before practice, and we immediately started actually taking our game to the next level. For me, I was younger than Bruce, still am, but he knew something and understood something that I had yet to learn, and that was how important it was to get better every day, and how important it was to find ways to get better and to beat your opponents, not only physically but mentally. So we would go forward for every game. We would look for weaknesses, we'd look for strengths, we'd figure out how we were going to run each play. So it wasn't just what he brought to the line, it was actually what he brought to my career, which was a lot of fun, because when we started playing together, I started getting a lot better too.
Quarterback Ricky Ray is in his 7th season with Edmonton, 2 of which were Grey Cup years with Bruce. He too spoke to a CBC reporter about one of his favorite ever offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, he was a big guy to have blocking your backside. You know, he played left tackle, and you know, he's kind of an old school guy, and you knew he was going to go out there and give it his best and be physical out there. And that's what I remember from my first few years, was just the offensive line we had was all like that, with Chris Morris and Bruce Beaton and Dan Comiskey and Tim Princeton, and you know, all those guys were kind of the throwback guys where you know, they just were out there, they were nasty, and they just got the job done. You can't play quarterback if you don't have protection, and I don't care who you are back there. I mean, it makes, if you don't have protection, it makes even the best ones look bad. So definitely having trust in those guys up front, and a guy like Bruce Beaton protecting your backside as a right-handed quarterback, it just allows you to do your job and be the player that you can be.
He'd always make sure that whatever it took to keep, you know, his man off the quarterback, he would do. And sometimes it would be borderline, you know, outside the rules, let's just say. But, you know, I admired him for that, because, you know, that team and that group, we always pride ourselves to try to do anything it took to win. And if you take a look at the championships that we've won in the past, you know, Bruce Beaton was definitely one of the guys that, you know, set that up for us younger guys that came in and followed.
Bruce had a certain ability and work ethic that amazed those around him, and here's Dan Comiskey with a bit more.
Uncle Heavy Hands, because he'd run by guys and just give them one of these, and you know, they'd tumble. And that was the neat thing about him. He's just a very big, strong guy. But what he did is he took his game to the next level in the off season. You know, he trains at a gym in Middleton, and it's this beautiful gym for offensive linemen, because it's actually the basement of a barn, you know, on a normal gym, and it's all strongman stuff down there. We actually still train there now just for recreation, but you see all of his old writings on the wall. On the beams, he's got how to beat the different players. So all off season, he would be mentally working on these players as he trained. And that's steps that a lot of athletes don't take.
Even though he would deny it in his typical modesty, Bruce is a role model to many, including Alan Wetmore, who describes Bruce Beaton this way.
You know, he's a big, strong fellow with great feet and extremely competitive. And he wants to represent himself at all points and times in his life. When he's on the field, he wants to be the best, and he wants to dominate his opponent. And all those tools are really, you know, the backbone to becoming a great athlete.
So how does a guy with absolutely no football background from a community like Port Hood that is nuts about hockey become a champion and a football all-star? Well, it's hard work and dedication to be the best. During the early part of his career, Bruce went through things that would have caused a lesser man to quit. The BC Lions wanted to transition him from defense to offense. They traded him to Ottawa, at that time a team at the bottom of the league. Finally, after bouncing to Calgary and then Montreal, where he was twice an Eastern Division All-Star, he settled in Edmonton and his career flourished. His work ethic caused a steady improvement of play and earned him 5 West Division All-Star spots and 3 All-CFL spots, plus 2 Grey Cups.
The leader of his offensive line. He dictated the work regimen. He dictated the philosophy. He was always the one in there watching film, and they would follow in behind because he was doing it. He knew that he was going to do it. He was a leader amongst them. They all looked up to him, and geez, we had some great offensive linemen on the team in Montreal. A good friend of his and mine was Mark Dixon, who ended up playing for the Miami Dolphins, and you know, they were 2 peas in a pod. They lived together, they watched film together, they trained together, they did all the small things together. So again, he just proved himself to be a leader.
His discipline was evident off the field as well. At Acadia, he earned an arts degree in political science. He completed his master's degree in football in the football off seasons rather. And since he retired, he has developed a couple of very successful companies, one in real estate and one in teaching self-development. After his Edmonton days, Bruce was named to the Eskimos All-Century team, and they have had some wonderful players in those 100 years. And Bruce